The next thing is this one. So now we are jumping into the actual details behind it. So those who are familiar with the macros in Excel can understand that this is the same dialog box that you get in Excel. So here it lists all the macros that are being available in the current drawing. So now this is the macro that is enabled, and you can see the description that goes into here. And here we have the option to rename a macro or copy and duplicate a macro so that you can create a variant out of it, or modify the macro and delete it out. So next, again, this options is where you can go much deeper into it to see how it affects the recording. So where it is getting stored, and then what are the additional file locations and all those things. So this option, let us hold on a while. We'll look again for the in the deeper coding section of it. But once you click on the selection macro and click on modify, you can get again the commands to it to change this command. So this is what the action macro manager is all about. So now let's look into the background part, how what happens when this action macro is being played. So towards this, let's just invoke this command line, and then now for simplicity's sake we'll remove this editing, and also we'll remove the user inputs. So now we'll click on the play action. So now we have got the macro. So now let's look into the steps that are taken into the macro. So what is the command itself is direct calling of the function. So this name of the macro is a command for execution. So next, once you click on it, then it goes into the logical sequence of it. It is calling a circle command, and then it is entering all the commands that is required for it based on the selection, based on all the action, and then gives out that the action has been completed. So typically what it's doing, you are kind of emancipating a robotic user to repeat a task. So even in the background, the same activities are being taken care of, and none of it is being left out. So this is about your action recorder, a pretty straightforward way of automating a simple macros. Okay, so now we'll look into the coding part of the macro. You've seen that using the recorder, action recorder, it's a direct application of the macro. But what is happening behind? So let's look into each one step by step. So before that, we'll also try to understand what are the syntax and rules for writing the macros. So once we have created a macros, we can use them in whatever conditions we want. In almost all the applications we can do it, because in action recorder we have one limitation, that if there comes any pop-up window wherein you have to specify the properties, then it can be challenging task. But in a macro, when you write them by code, you do not have such restrictions at all. You can go for the pull down menus, the ribbon panels, the toolbars, tool palettes, whatsoever. So to come back to the basic definition of what is a macro. A macro is a text string that combines commands and options that are being heavily used for repeated use. So it's kind of way of taking the command line input, whatever we are using it here, and storing it for later use. So that one click of the mouse can accomplish a drawing task, whereas it would have taken in a normal way by a series of action, list of actions. But instead of on a single click of those invoking the macro command, you can run it out. So let us start with this example again. So how do we invoke the circle? So towards this, let us quickly go to the M text to just have in here how it's going to look into. So the first thing is the command circle that you have to enter for a circle. So it starts by this. It starts by the command of circle. Then as soon as the circle command is done, we'll also try and expand it out. See, once the circle command is executed, in order to go to the next command line, we're clicking the enter button. But in order to make, okay, let me just quickly take this out so that we are on the same line. Okay, so this is the typical way of running the command using the command prompt. So now, so that's the first thing that we're going to do, the circle executing. But next is we have to click on the enter button to go into the command. So the command syntax in macro is that it's executed by a semicolon symbol. So the effect of this with a semicolon is the same as typing it out and pressing out enter in the command line. So next is we want to take in the user input. If you can recollect in the macro action tab, what we had done was we had given a symbol for passing to take in the user input. So because next command is we need to specify the center point as the default. So towards that, we need to execute this slash command. So that will tell AutoCAD to pause for a user input. So next, once that's done, then it goes for the next input. That is, we have specified that once the pass has come, you would have specified the center point, and next is entering the value of the prompt. So now AutoCAD expects us to feed in a radius. So that radius is 50 units for us. So there goes the number 50. So once it's done, we need to come out of this command to execute that. So it's done by pressing the enter and hence semicolon again. So this is how the command looks like. You have the circle, semicolon for enter, slash for user input, and then the radius, and then closing out the command. As you can see here, the command, the normal action points have all been replaced by a single line of code. So this is how macros are written, and this is how they are very quick to execute. But one another thing, this executes a macro, but there might be certain conditions when some other command would have got run before we are executing this macro. So in order to make sure that any existing running commands are cancelled, we prefix this command by using the caret symbol C caret C again. So what it does is this caret C means cancelling. So we are cancelling twice so that it comes out of all the steps that might be in the previous command. And next step is that we also include an underscore between these. That is, you execute two cancel commands, and before executing of this command, you introduced a underscore so as to force the macro to use the English definition by using the underscore. That is, use only the circle definition so that it eliminates any issue. So that this is the basic special characters that are being used in the macros. So to quickly look into, we use the semicolon for we enter, and if there are any requirement for blank space, then you can enter blank space by typing in space. And next, this is for the user input, and next underscore is for translating AutoCAD commands and options that follows this to the English language. Then you have this hyphen arrow, so that will run the command line version of a command. That is, if this command line version is going to be C, then you can replace it by hyphen C. And also we can, repeat the command by putting out a star icon into it. So that is, unless otherwise it is cancelled. Sorry, this star precedes it. So unless otherwise the user cancels the input, you can repeat the macro continuously. That is, you're looping it out. And finally, we have one symbol called as the dollar that is used for decel expression. So this decel is another proprietary language code that translates as direct. Okay, let me just type it out. So this dollar is another programming code that you use for, that is, direct interpretively evaluated string expression language. So this is another language that you can use to code your program codes, but it means that using this symbol as dollar as prefix, you can enter your diesel code into your macro. Also, there's something called as a list. So this list that we'll see in the next session is an acronym for list processing, and it's another high level computer programming language that's used in artificial intelligence system. So this is also another programming language that can also be used within the macro environment. So but right now, let us not focus on these and only focus on the basics of this command. So now we have a macro in place. So this is the macro that we want to evaluate, but you cannot directly enter this macro onto your command line. This AutoCAD does not identify this command that is being entered in the command line. It just shows us an error that it is not able to understand the command. So then how it has to be executed? So we need to have a place to execute it. So this macros can be added to any interface element using interface editor called as the Customized User Interface or CUI. So this CUI, Customized User Interface, is a separate topic by itself, but let's see the basic bare minimum requirements to key in a new macro command. So as you can see in this interface, we can have a look at all the commands that constitute behind the background or behind the execution of your AutoCAD. So this is what has happened inside. So this is the existing commands. But right now, we're going to create a new command. So clicking on this will invoke the new command option. So this is where we get a new command. So first thing, we can give the name of this command. So we'll say custom circle for our understanding. And now this is where we enter our macro. So this is going to be circle colon /50 and the semicolon. So now the name of this macro is custom circle and the macro that is executed is this, and if required we can allocate any image that we want to put in here. So let us just take this as the image that we want to execute. Okay, so now this is got assigned onto your command list in here. You can see that the new command has been created as a custom circle that bears the command as here. In the description, this plots a circle with 50 mm in radius. So now this goes into the description of this command for us easy understanding. So now clicking on OK means that this macro has now been added into the system. You can see that it has got executed in the background and then it's stored in the memory. So now we can go ahead and call the circle. So after saying this macro, one key thing that we have to understand is that even though we have given a command name, this command display name is not of major use to us because we cannot call them from the command line, because even when you call it in here, it won't execute because it is not a command that it can understand. So the first way of using it is in the CUI interface. In the CUI interface, so to use this command, we have all the options of putting this out in the CUI editor itself. So we have the ribbon panels, the toolbars or menus. So what we can do here is we can take this thing to the menu that we want to do. Suppose if in this toolbar we have here the draw toolbar. So in this draw toolbar, we can introduce this by dragging and dropping it. So now this is one way of doing it. That is within this customization tab, we are updating this tool. So now you can see that. So now we can see that our custom macro has been plotted out in the existing toolbar of draw. So now when we click on it, you can see that the prompt is being displayed for the center point. Once clicking, you are executing the command. So this is the macro using the CUI editor interface. So now what we have done is we have pasted on a toolbar. So alternatively, we can also put this macro onto any menus that we want to place, or in the ribbon panel, or and most conveniently into your palettes. So in the last session, we had seen about the tool palettes. So the tool palettes already, it represents the custom work panel that we have here. So already we had created blocks that are custom made for us. So now we can also use our macros to be placed inside the tool macros, the tool palettes. So this again by dragging and dropping it. So now you can position it into the custom. So what it typically means that is you can use this customized user interface panel to optimize all the workplace, the viewing on the screen to your convenience. So for example, you can modify the double click actions for different commands and how it should work about. So all this has been included in it. And also you can do a chain of activities using these custom macros that we have. We can also invoke in this tool palette, we can give all the custom macro commands that we have along with the other hatching tool, and all the actions that we want to repeat can be taken here. So now we'll see an additional modification of existing commands that we have to suit our own purpose. So we'll see an example of how to change the text case for any text command that we have. So towards this, we'll invoke the CUI menu, and in CUI, when you click on the text, you can see that there's already one that is available. Change the text case. So we'll now drag and drop it to our custom panel that we have here, and right click on it on properties. Here you can see that all the tool properties of that is being listed here. So this is what the command goes in. So we have the tcase command to change the character to the higher thing. But right now, so this is the existing command. So we'll see how this existing command works first and then looks into how to modify it. So we'll select this text and then click on this change test case. Now we can see that the command prompt opens up and we have the option to change it entirely to the uppercase or title or lowercase or toggle case, that is switch between the uppercase and lowercase respectively. So this is the existing command that we want. It's already there. But let us now modify it to our thing, that is, we change that, change text case to uppercase. That is, we want this to change the case only to the uppercase. So in that manner, what we're doing is, we are modifying it using this two double caret symbol to make sure that it cancels out an existing command twice, and then we'll click out a hyphen here. This hyphen, as we seen earlier, it will suppress the dialog box, because once we click it, we got a dialog box prompting for what case we are in, because we're not going to use that, but rather be driving within the command itself. And next is, we have to click in the enter, that is we are suppressing the command, that is we have to go into the tcase command, so taking a semicolon, and then a user input should be prompted, a slash, and then again entering, and then what is being required, because this flash will ask to select the object, and once that is done, this semicolon will terminate it, and then finally what should we choose? So we need to go for the uppercase character. So we'll give it the U and then close the command by a semicolon. So now we'll click in OK, that we have modified this. So once we click on this, so you can see that the select object appears, and once it's done, so directly we have skipped certain steps in the given macro. That is, we have taken a exist system command and then we have modified it to suit our purpose for a specific task. So this is also a very good example of to see the how powerful the macro can be. Also, what you can do is you can modify it. So this is the system image variable. So indirectly what we can do is we can modify the image of it. If you have an image, you can take it. So likewise, if we want to modify it, then we can paste it as one more thing and then change this to, for example, in the say toggle case. So in that case, you modify it to be and this is how you update your existing codes into custom codes using macros. So now in AutoCAD, we have one more interface for this macro called as the VBA macro, Visual Basic for Applications macro. So actually this, the functions that we have seen right now with the action recorder and the custom macros for AutoCAD sort of had a basics to this VBA macro. So, but considering the simplicity and the ease of customization, the current macros that we have seen is of prime importance. But for knowledge purpose, let us also quickly look into the heritage macro that we have here in VBA. But catch point here is this VBA is constituted by Microsoft for this Excel application for that uses the Visual Basic as the programming language. So this Visual Basic programming language across different applications. So this is where this VBA comes in, Visual Basic for applications. So it means that you can sync your AutoCAD application along with an Excel application or a Word or whatever you have. You can take data across. That is, you can have a single coding interface that can very well work within different applications. So that is where this VBA macro helps us to do. So let's just quickly see. When you click on this run VBA macro, we'll be getting in the requirement for macro name. So let us go ahead and then plot a circle again and see. So we'll just give it a circle macro and of course VBA. And once we give on the macro name, so we get this option of create highlights. So now we have to attach drawing or the project to the macro. So we'll attach the current drawing that we have here. Once it's done, we'll get in the VBA editor interface where we have the project tree where we can see what are the modules that are being called for, and then we have the watches diagram that will be useful for us to decode the drawing, decode the code. But this typically this is where our coding page comes in. So here this is the function. Let us not dwell deep into it but have a small overview. So this is like a typical coding functional wherein you have a function. So this circle macro VBA is a function that is called for with a end sub and end sub, opening and ending of this section. So into it, so typically what we have to do is we have to declare all the variables that we are going to use in this application. So first thing is we have to know how the circle is going to drawn here. So this circle command is the add circle command that is into the VBA code. So it requires a center as well as a radius. So towards this, we'll define the assigned variables and define them. That is, so dimension circle center. So this is the variable name, but we'll create it as array of 3, that is to x, y and z, and we'll define them as double data type. So likewise, we'll define the circle radius. As you can see here, the variable names and the nomenclatures are highly case sensitive. So typically all the first letters of the word start with a capital letter, whereas the commands also start off with the capital letter. So we need to take due care in ensuring that the system variables are not used as commands and vice versa. So all the coding language care that we take for other applications or for other coding languages, be it C or C++, the same thing can be taken here as the understanding. So now we have created two variables to bear the circle centers and the circle radius. So now we have to create one variable to hold the circle object in order to draw it. So here we'll define as a circle object variable, and it's going to define as the AutoCAD circle element. So these are all inbuilt object libraries that are within this AutoCAD VB application. So we are using this inbuilt to define how it is. So now let us go ahead and define the values. So circle center, the first variable. So let us say it is of the x is 250 and y is 250 again, and z is 0. So next is we'll assign this circle radius, say 100 units. Now we'll set the circle object. So how it is going to be assigned. So here the function calls that it is attaching to this drawing dot. So dot is a nesting of this function. So here once you click on dot, you can see the requirement. So now we'll go into the model space of our drawing, and within that model space let us go by the command of add a circle. So once you open the parenthesis, you can see that what are the prompts required for it. So first thing is the circle center, and next is the radius. Here you can see what are the data types that has to be declared and what is the object type that needs to be declared. So that is how we have declared the circle radius, circle object and circle center. So now declaring a circle radius, and now clicking on enter. Now this completes our macro codes. So we have a lot of debug options and all here, but right now let us run this macro and see. So now we can zoom out and see, because we have given a different radius here. So here you can see that object has been positioned at a dimension of 200 mm in dia. So you can quickly see that the dia is of 200 with the axis points being at 100, 200 and 200 mm. So this is how we can also draw or execute a function using the VBA macro script.